your reaction to the investigation being dropped after 2 years?
Yeah, so Anderson, it's obviously a huge sigh of relief. It's been an incredibly stressful and trying time for my family, and so I'm incredibly glad to have that behind us finally. I'm of course glad that the department came around finally to making the right decision, but I'll tell you, it's just an absolute disgrace that they let this thing drag on as long as they did and put my family through what we've gone through over the last 2 years, and they should be, I'm just disgusted at the way the whole thing's been handled.
Yeah, I mean, to have it drag on like this, is there any actual reason why it would have dragged on for 2 years other than to keep you kind of twisting in the wind?
No, Anderson, there's not. This is not a complicated issue. There were no facts in dispute. There's a small number of people they needed to talk to. IG referrals to U.S. attorneys' offices are handled typically many times a year and very quickly. Typically, they're declined before the ink is dry on the IG's report. This one they decided to spend 2 years thinking about. I'm sure a lot of that time was spent thinking about how frustrated the president would likely be when they came to the inevitable conclusion that there was no case here. But that's just a theory on my part.
Well, also, I mean, the whole, it fits into the larger theme of weaponizing the Department of Justice against perceived enemies or just people the president doesn't like. They could have been holding it because they were afraid of what the president would say about it. It could have also just been, just to leave you twisting in the wind, paying up legal fees and having the stress and this sort of Damocles hanging over you.
That's certainly true. And look, I've said from the very beginning, the attacks on me, from the way that I was removed to the FBI to the ultimate criminal investigation, I believe were designed to undermine my credibility as a potential witness against the president for the decisions that I made in essentially initiating the Russia case and ensuring that got handed off to a special prosecutor. I think the part of their goal here was to, intentionally destroy my reputation and my credibility in an effort to kind of put me behind, any usefulness in those investigations. This is the way this administration responds. When someone steps forward to tell a truth or to represent any facts that the administration finds uncomfortable, they attack people personally. It's not just me. This is a much bigger situation than just me. We've seen it time and time again. We saw it most recently with the witnesses, those government servants who stepped up and followed the law and responded to lawful subpoenas and told the truth as they know it, have all now been attacked and vilified, and some of them fired from their positions for doing so. So that's what they do. This president's MO is to attack people personally when he doesn't like what they have to say.
Yeah, and not just that. I mean, it's, let's fire Vindman. Oh, yeah, and let's fire his twin brother, which, seems an odd thing to kind of an odd exclamation point on it. There was a transcript released today in which the judge in this case previously told Justice Department attorneys that the handling of the case was disturbing, in the judge's words, and getting close to a banana republic. Do you agree?
Absolutely agree. I mean, that's one of the things that concerns me most about not just the president, but the way that the Justice Department has handled these matters that are clearly so important to this president. If we don't expect to live in a country where the perceived political enemies of the president suddenly become the subjects of criminal investigations in a pursuit to throw political enemies in jail, which is clearly what the president himself has said time and time again. He said it just from the Oval Office a few days ago, in decrying the sentence that had been recommended for Roger Stone, and in the same breath calling for the imprisonment of myself and James Comey. That is an absolute abrogation of everything we know and expect from our system of justice here as Americans, and it's disturbing to see the Department of Justice playing a role in that politicization of the work that DOJ should be doing.
Our system is set up, in a very well thought out way with checks and balances. But when you start to look at what has gone on, The president they've packed the courts with a lot of judges. Hasn't gotten a lot of attention over the last couple of years, but they've been very successful in getting a huge number of judges appointed by the president. Obviously, the Senate is not standing up to the president. At least the Republicans in the Senate are afraid, clearly, of the blowback of contradicting this president. And Mitt Romney is now a case study in what can happen if you do. There's the Justice Department, which now seems to be weaponized. I mean, the next step, I guess, is sort of weaponizing the military in some way. Talking about steps toward a banana republic, that is essentially the next step.
It is, and it's frightening to think through these potential developments. But when you look back on the recent past and the experiences we've had as a nation, you can't help but be very concerned for our future. And the founders had the brilliance to conceive a structure in which there were three co-equal branches of government that each imposed checks and balances on each other. Well, we've seen Congress's complete and total failure to follow through on that responsibility they have to put any sort of check on the administration. Thank God we still have independent, fair-minded judges in our system, like Judge Walton, who you referred to earlier, who are not afraid to call the prosecutors in the Department of Justice to account, to explain why they are handling, in this case, my situation in such a arbitrary and unfair way. So thankfully, we still have folks in place that are willing to live up to that oath and to that responsibility that they've taken through their positions. But it is really concerning.
Aside from being understandably angry about all of what you've been through, has it been in a way surreal? I mean, in the past couple of minutes, while you've been on with me on Fox, there's a banner font calling you a liar. I mean, did you ever expect in any way to be dealing with anything like this?
Anderson, I spent 21 years in the FBI as a part of an institution that prides itself on fidelity, bravery, and integrity. And to be removed from that organization and unfairly branded a liar, because that was the desired outcome by the president, has just been one of the most sickening and demeaning experiences of my life. It's horrendous, and it is unfortunate that, having listened to propaganda like Fox News, there are many people in this country that will believe that forever. I can't do anything about that except continue to live and to speak out in the way I've tried to do over the last year, to stand up for what I believe in, and to tell the truth, however inconvenient for the president or anybody else.
Andrew McCabe, I appreciate you being on. Thank you.
Thanks, Anderson.
Coming up next, we're going to hear from two other former top justices.